Welcome back to another edition of the Course Creation Incubator. I'm your host, Gina Anativia from the Course Creation Boutique, and I want to make sure you're getting your course done, getting it out there, getting it in the hands of your students. And I've been thinking a lot lately about how do you learn something from scratch? Because I feel like it's easy to do when you're a kid. Everything is brand new. I love teaching my son Tristan new stuff. And by the way, I just got back from camping for the first time. I know, it's hard to believe. I've never been camping before. And I've got to say, even though I feel like a total zombie, I'm so tired, I had a blast. We did the s'mores thing. We had French press coffee, eggs and dry rub bacon, ribeyes, and it was all done overlooking a beautiful lake. And I guess now that I've written this script, my favorite part was eating, because all I'm doing is mentioning the food. Not to mention I got a kick being in the tent with Tristan and my husband, Alex. It was a tight squeeze, but it was still fun. And I mentioned I love watching Tristan learn new things. Well, he set up the tent for the first time, and he also learned how to start and maintain a fire. And I'll show a picture of the show notes where Tristan is literally staring at the fire, cardboard in hand, ready to take care of it and make sure it doesn't go out. And I feel like sometimes as adults, we feel it's hard to learn something new. I feel like it's hard to learn something new. I definitely don't have the patience I once did. I feel like every year my patience dwindles more and more. So I thought over the next few episodes, I'll teach some of the how-tos that I like to show my students and my clients and go back to some of the fundamentals. I did an entire course about legendary UCLA basketball coach John Wooden, who has incredible teachings and quotes. And Wooden once said, "I believe in the basics, attention to and perfection of tiny details and may be commonly overlooked. They may seem trivial, perhaps even laughable to those who don't understand, but they aren't. They are fundamental to your progress in basketball, business, and life." And that's why we're here today. And that's why I wanted to do this series, because they're fundamental and so critical to you building your course to becoming a successful course creator. And here's the thing too, the course market, it's crowded. Like, let's just call a spade, right? It's more important than ever to make your course stand out as being exceptional. And we do that through these fundamental steps. This is what's going to set your course up for success and help you build a thriving course business. That's what we're talking about in this podcast, right? To set you up for the long term. So I thought we'd kick this series off with scripting. This is one of my favorite things to talk about with my students. It's a system that I teach all of my clients and my students when they're ready to start scripting their lessons. Before I launch into that system, there's a few steps I want you to have done in advance to make sure that you've got those pieces in place, that you're truly ready to start scripting for your course. First and foremost, you've done your course validation. You know who you're serving. You know your niche market. You know who is more than likely to buy. I'll link to some episodes so you have some background on this in the show notes. Now, second, you've done your course promise. This is the transformation you're going to provide, the results that you're going to deliver. Then third, you've done your posted exercise process to get your outline done. I'll link to that episode as well to make sure you have that process in front of you. Now, once you've got your posted exercise process done, you're ready to tackle scripting. Now, if you don't have those steps dialed in yet, it's all good. Listen to this episode to get a sense of how you're going to script, and then you can bookmark it for the future when you're ready. I created this process after years and years of watching peak performance coach, my boss, my ex-boss, Tony Robbins, get on stage and teach the same way again and again. I thought, this guy has a great system here that we can apply to online courses. So the 7-step scripting formula was born. Now, here's why this formula is so important. Scripting can get a little overwhelming once you start diving into 10, 15, 20 videos. Like you're going through a maze and wondering, where the heck am I? Where am I going? Second, I want to make sure you're getting all of your pieces in. A lot of you come to me and say, Gina, I've got all this content. How do I make sure that I'm getting all those little pieces that I need to include? The scripting process will help you do that. It will help you be more thorough. And the third, I don't want you to overcomplicate the process. The structure keeps it simple. Okay, I've been doing a lot of intro to get to the process. Let's get into it. First, pick a script that you want to work on, okay? This is one video. Most of you are creating video courses. That's a best practice these days. That's where a lot of students see the value. So, number one, you want to start with the hook, okay? That's the first step. You want to engage your audience from the get-go. You've got 8 seconds to engage someone before you lose them. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a story, or it's a comment or stat or a quote. Whatever it is, you hook them from the get-go. So if you have a meal planning course, for example, and you're writing a lesson about the value of setting aside time on a Sunday night, you might say 40% of entrepreneurial moms admit to not making the time to meal prep. Now, I completely made that up, but you get that idea. And maybe it's not 40%, maybe it's even more compelling, 70%, right? Gosh, I don't make the freaking time. I'm an entrepreneurial mom. I could use some meal planning. Or you could start with a story, or you could start with a quote, right? Like I've had different course creators who start with famous quotes from celebrities or legends over the years, and that's something consistent. Or you could start with a story. So I've had course creators who consistently start with, say, a personal story of their journey because they're the example for that course. Their first result was theirs. So that's really a great way to grab people from the get-go as well. So say I'm writing a video lesson about mastering your mindset when it comes to your online course. My hook for my course could be something like feeling like you're not the expert is one of the top reasons folks don't finish their courses. Or I can strengthen that by saying 2 out of 3 course creators don't finish because they fear they're not the expert, right? And I can say that. I don't have a statistic behind that, right? I'm not going to find a study that says 60% of people don't do this, but I can say that as an anecdote as a course coach and consultant. And I think that's something that grabs you from the get-go and you want to learn more. So think about what that hook is from the get-go. Okay, second step of our 7-step process, then you're going to tell them what they're going to learn. You're telling them up front, here's my outcome for you. This sets the stage to learn. So the outcome for this lesson, if you give you a few strategies to hone your mindset when the fears and doubts come in. Now, this is outcome-based, what they're going to learn, because you always want to orient your student to what you're talking about. You've got it in your mind about where you are in this course, and you know exactly what's going on, but your student is brand new. They're coming from 0 and then going to 100 or 1,000. So you got to orient them constantly. This is where you're at. This is where we're going. Step 3, from there, you can give them a story or example. Now, going back, this can be a story from your personal life, right? So especially if you're the result. Or a client or a student example. If you've got powerful case studies, you can give an example there. You can have an anecdote about a story about a famous person as well. It doesn't have to be necessarily attached to you. I could tell a story about this course creator who was almost done with her course. And then the doubts started to creep in and she asked 10 different people for their thoughts and then never finished because she completely got stalled. So that's a story that really connects with the mindset piece and grabs people again and wants them to learn more. Okay, step 4, you're going to go into the meat or core of what you're going to teach. This could be steps or your process or ways, or it could be one thing, but it's the main part. So here I would give 3 methods to fight imposter syndrome for my sample lesson, or I could do 3 steps to get over the doubts. So you want some kind of meat here. It doesn't have to be a number. It doesn't have to be steps, but it has to be the main point of this lesson, the crux of this lesson. Step 5, if appropriate, you're going to review those steps or pieces as part of this step. So I like to do a review if there are 3 steps or more to help the student get that content in their body. Repetition is the mother of skill, especially when they're learning new content like this. I feel like you can't repeat it too many times, and having that review is important. Step 6, you're going to go into the homework. Now, your folks are going to want to know what comes next. Remember I said you got to orient them? So by taking a moment to go over their next steps, you're clearly guiding your students so they succeed, and you're building some of that important trust factor. And I've talked about this before. If you don't have homework or actionable items, then you don't really have an online course in my book. Now, I talked to this guy who wanted to do a course about teaching people how to edit on their phones. Pretty cool, right? Like he did some beautiful edits. And then I said, okay, what's inside your course? And he says, well, I've got these 14 video lessons. I said, okay, great. What else? He said, that's it. It's just these 14 videos. I said, well, where's your homework? And he's like, I'm not going to have any homework. I'm not going to have any handouts. And I said, that's great. But in my book, you don't really have a course because you don't have that last piece to help people take action. That's where the transformation comes in. They process the content, or they're watching the content via video. And then the next step is to apply it to them, for them to take action on it. Going back to Tony on stage, Tony always said, open your workbook, right? And now you're going to do the exercise for yourself. He showed you the concept. He walked through these other steps. And then he said, okay, now it's time to take action. So if you're missing this piece, you don't have a course. You don't have a transformation. You don't have a promise. And even if they're watching the video lessons, I could just see people emailing me right now or Instagramming me and saying, well, Gina, can't I just watch the videos and get what I need? Absolutely. But why not provide them exercises or the next steps or PDFs or instructions, right? They don't even have to be written exercises. I could say, go talk to a colleague or a friend about this and implement this way and take action. So it doesn't even have to be like a classic exercise, but you want them to take action. You want them to do homework. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. So the homework in my sample course could be to do an exercise to see where your doubts may come up in terms of your course. And then talking about maybe what's your story around those doubts and what's the new story that you could install instead. So I want them to really digest what they've learned and make it actionable for them. Okay, step 7, finally, you're going to give them the next steps. You're going to tell them to do their homework and then maybe share their homework with a friend or a colleague. And then you're going to say, I'll see you in the next lesson. Congratulations for working through that. Next, we're going to talk about course structure or whatever it is, whatever the next lesson is my course. Okay, so again, here's my review, right? You're going to do your greeting or your hook or your welcome. It's a quote, it's a statistic, it's a personal story. Then it's an optional story or example up front. Then you're going to go into the core or meat of what you're teaching. Then you will review, possibly as step 5. Then you're going to give them homework and tell them about next steps. And you'll rinse and repeat for each script. Okay, so those are your 7 steps. That's your 7-step formula to getting your course done. Now, a few final thoughts before I leave you. One script at a time. So I said this at the onset. If you're working through this formula, you want to open up one Google Doc. I like Google Docs, one lesson, and be laser focused on that script. Because this is where the overwhelm can happen. Because some of you have outlined, 30, 40 scripts, right? Or 30 or 40 videos. You can't get them done all at once. You got to deal with it one at a time, and then you deal with one module at a time. And then also, number 2, there's another tip. You're going to start by answering my favorite question. If you've been listening to this podcast, what's the outcome? Think about what the script is really about and how it's going to serve your student. So if you find yourself getting off course or really wondering, do I need to include this content? Go back to that outcome. And then finally, number 3, find your flow before you write. I've talked about getting into that deep work state. And I've talked about Deep Work by Cal Newport and how much I love that book. And I'll link to that episode as well, so you can get into your groove or get into your own flow. And making sure you're setting aside that time for the deep, intense work that really scripting often calls for. Okay, that's it. That's the 7-step process. Use it for any time you're writing a piece for your course. And if you're feeling overwhelmed with your scripting or any of the processes that I'm talking about on this podcast, I'm working on some new intensives for the new year to help students. So I'll list those opportunities as they come up in the show notes. I will see you next week when we have our next how-to in our series about getting a bunch of content, yes, including scripts, done at once. Until then, go create, be you and be brilliant, and get it done.